Kevin Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to first of all make some remarks in response to the contribution from Dr. Paul Hutchison, because Dr. Hutchison's contribution to the debate indicated, I think, that perhaps like everyone else in New Zealand, he's been left a little flat-footed, and the remarks from my Labour colleagues may indicate why, about what this bill does, because he appears to suggest in his contribution that the change is merely a cosmetic one, and he draws our attention to the reasonableness of CPI increases, in fact missing the point that actually what this bill represents is a fundamental change to the state's policy in relation to asset testing thresholds. That actually we are moving in this bill that will not be subject to any submissions at all from the public to a regime in which the current threshold is frozen in real terms. That's what we're doing. We're freezing the current threshold. And that is a change from a policy that has been in place since 2004 of actually progressively rolling back the threshold. And that is not just a cosmetic change, sir, that is a fundamental change. And as Ruth Dyson indicates, it is a change that older New Zealanders, I believe, are entitled to have been consulted about. Because actually, if there's one thing that older New Zealanders ask from the state, it is some certainty on which to plan their affairs. And effectively, they have been made a promise about the asset testing regime that will be in place at the point that they may need residential care, and that promise is now being gone back on. That's what the government is doing with this bill. And sadly, sir, Dr. Hutchison doesn't seem to understand that that's what's being done, and most New Zealanders will have woken up this morning not understanding what's being done, and I just hope that through the process of this debate we can actually raise with them what is occurring, and the fact that tragically they will not have a say on it. They will not have a say on it. Dr. Hutchison suggests that there is support for the change that's being made, and the weak basis for that claim is that he hasn't personally seen a press release from Age Concern or Grey Power about it. Well, I haven't seen their press releases either, sir. But I did hear Roy Reid, the national president of Grey Power, on Morning Report this morning, around 6:15, saying that he thought it was a very bad idea, and talking about asset testing as a discriminatory act against older people. And sir, that's the Green Party's view also. That's the Green Party's view, that asset testing for aged residential care is discriminatory on the grounds of age against a group of New Zealanders who actually, if anyone is entitled to it, are entitled to security in their old age. Now, what is there more important in Christianity than to be our brother's keepers in reality? Why should people not have security in their old age or when they are invalided? That's Michael Joseph Savage, sir, from the parliamentary debate on the introduction of the Social Security Act in the first place. And indeed, that cuts to the very heart of this issue. And so finally, Paul Hutchison refers to this as being a responsible bill. Well, I would say it's not responsible. I'd say it's responsive, sir, but responsive to not the needs of New Zealanders, but rather to the needs of the government to be able to spin the health budget. Because the spin is all about $1.5 billion extra for health, health being the big winner from this government's budget. Well, sir, it's a struggle to figure out exactly how the government's reached that $1.5 billion number. But what it seems to be, sir, is the total of the cost over 4 years of what has been announced as new initiatives. Well, that's a cost. It's over 4 years, and it's not about the revenue. So, yes, it's true. It's true that the government is intending in the budget that the Minister, Tony Ryle, has trumpeted with the press release that's on the Beehive website that I see members from the National Party have been displaying on their iPads. It's true that is the total cost of those new initiatives. But the fact is, sir, that in a budget that at its top line is supplying just $288 million more in vote health, that's barely 2% of the vote health budget as an increase. Well, that increase is probably not enough to cover even the cost of inflation in health, let alone the growing population, sir, let alone the growing population of older people with increased needs, sir. So actually, the increase from last year to this year in vote health will not even enable the sector to stand still. So just to be able to try and stand still, the sector will need to be cutting health services. That's the only way that they will be able to do that. And on top of that, we've got a whole series of new initiatives from the government. Well, all of those new initiatives, $434 million in the first year, will have to be funded by cuts elsewhere in the health sector. That's not how it's being spun by the government, but that's the reality when the budget is not even being increased by enough to cover inflation, let alone demographic factors, and let alone these new initiatives. So the only way that the government is able to put more money into elective surgery, for example, or more money into rheumatic fever, or more money into cancer services, is to take that money from somewhere else in the health sector. And sadly, sir, in this bill, we are seeing the machinery behind one of those sources, because one of the places that they're taking money from to be able to fund those new initiatives and demographic change in demand is from older people. It's from older people. But actually, that's the point. So what Paul Hutchison says, that this is a responsible budget, is completely wrong. It is responsive to the government's need to find revenue sources to fund its extravagant promises in health, its extravagant spin around health. And so that is reprehensible, because the cost of doing that, and members have referred to the year one contribution this will make of just somewhat over $4 million. Over time, the amount of money that government will peg back by going back on its promise to older New Zealanders, over time that amount will increase. I think in the fourth year it's something like $16 million. And still it's not a lot in the face of the health budget. But what it suggests is a government that is so desperate to be able to support its spin about health spending and about the $1.5 billion in new initiatives, that it is prepared to claw back even that promise that it's made to older people. Now, sir, there are big issues. There are big issues in aged residential care. And the Green Party and the Labour Party in the last term of Parliament produced a report about what some of those issues were. And they are things like ensuring quality of care. They are things like ensuring equitable wages for the work that's done in that sector. And they are things like ensuring the dignity of older people and reflecting the dignity of older people in the type of care that they receive, in the type of regime to which they are subjected. And so, in this bill, the government further undermines the dignity of older people by creating once again a discriminatory regime and entrenching that regime. And so that, sir, is not what older New Zealanders deserve. Older New Zealanders deserve that security in the evening of their days, as Michael Joseph Savage first promised in the 1930s. And that, sir, is what this government ought to be living up to and is not.
Melissa Lee.
It's a great pleasure to rise to